You won't believe what my own sons shouted as they locked the handcuffs around my wrists. Rot in jail, Ma. We'll enjoy every penny of your fortune. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. Those words, his voice, I can still hear it echoing off the courtroom walls. Cold metal closed around my wrists, and even though it burned my skin, nothing compared to the fire inside my chest. My son, laughing at me, as if I were the villain in his story. Next to him stood Layla, his wife. She had that smug little smile she wore like lipstick, bold, fake, and painted on with precision. She leaned into his ear and whispered something that made him burst out into another cruel laugh, louder this time, meant for me to hear. The judge banged the gavel, calling for order, but it was useless. The verdict had been delivered. 3 years. 3 years in federal prison for crimes I didn't commit. Fraud. Embezzlement. Lies, all of it. Bought witnesses. Forged documents. They'd orchestrated a masterpiece of deceit. And they won. Or so they thought. Layla slid her manicured hand around Darren's arm, my son, and they strolled out like royalty, like they had just conquered a kingdom. She turned once, locking eyes with me, and that look, it wasn't just satisfaction. It was hatred. I watched them go, disappearing through the double doors of the courtroom, laughing, whispering, planning. Probably already thinking about how to split up my money. A luxury dinner. Champagne. A shopping spree in Paris. Everything I had worked for. Every single dollar earned over 4 decades. Gone. The bailiff tugged at my arm. I stood, though my knees screamed in protest. At 71, even standing too fast can be punishment. But I wouldn't show them weakness. I wouldn't let those courtroom strangers see me break. As I was dragged toward the side door, I heard the whispers. Some people looked at me with sympathy. Others with contempt. One woman, an old friend of my late husband, looked away in shame when our eyes met. My cheeks burned. The humiliation was a knife slowly twisting. The hallway to processing reeked of bleach and despair. My shoes squeaked across the worn floor as I passed other inmates, some crying, some lost in silence. All wearing that same hollow look. But I wasn't hollow. Not yet. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted the most? Drop a broken heart in the comments if you have. Let's see how many of us are stronger than they expected. We entered a small, windowless waiting room. The walls were that same yellowed cream color they always use in forgotten places. A few hard plastic chairs were bolted to the floor. Behind a metal desk sat a man with tired eyes and a badge that read, Officer Carl Jennings. He looked up, slowly, as if the weight of years pushed down every movement. Carl didn't look like a bad man, just one who'd seen too much. Wrinkles deepened when he frowned at the paperwork handed to him. My escort exchanged a few hushed words with him, then left. I was alone. With him. And the weight of what had just happened. I sank into the chair. My wrists were still cuffed, the metal now warm with my skin. I stared down, numb. The echo of Darren's voice danced through my head. He was my son. My only son. I raised him alone after his father died. I loved him through every fever, every heartbreak, every foolish decision. And now he was outside. Celebrating. They thought I was beaten. But they didn't know what I carried in my pocket. As Carl read through my documents, I slipped my hand slowly toward the inner lining of my jacket, my old gray tweed jacket I'd worn every day of the trial. Everyone had probably thought it was just a sentimental piece of old lady clothing. But deep in the pocket, folded perfectly into a neat square, was my last hope. A note. Just a name. A number. And a promise that would change everything. Do you want to know what was on that note and who it was meant for? Trust me, part 2 is where everything begins to turn. Stay with me. My fingers trembled as I pulled the folded paper from my jacket pocket, so slowly, every millimeter feeling like a lifetime. The paper was warm from my body, a little damp with sweat. It was nothing but a small scrap torn from a worn notebook, but it held the weight of everything I had left. My lifeline. Carl was still reading through the files, flipping pages with slow concentration, frowning every so often. I kept my movements subtle, just like I'd practiced in my head over and over in that cell. I gripped the paper tight in my cuffed hands, shielding it from view. I couldn't breathe properly. My chest tightened, heart pounding so loud it echoed in my ears. I waited for the right moment. Finally, Carl looked away to pore over another form, his eyes squinting through his old reading glasses. I slid the note onto his desk, tucking it right next to the file, positioning it perfectly. Not obvious, but just enough that he'd see it if he looked. Then I sat back, waiting. Every muscle in my body clenched. Please see it. Please read it. Carl took a deep breath and leaned back, rubbing his eyes. His chair squeaked beneath him. Then, there it was. His gaze landed on the note. He blinked. His brow furrowed. For a second, he didn't move. He just stared at it like it had materialized out of thin air. Then, slowly, he picked it up. He unfolded the paper and read. I watched his face change in real time, confusion, surprise, and then a kind of disbelief that made him freeze. His lips parted slightly. His hand trembled. He looked up at me. His voice was low, almost a whisper. Is this real? The Robert Callahan? The Robert Callahan? I nodded, not blinking. My eyes burned, but I wouldn't let a single tear fall. Not yet. Callahan wasn't just some rich man. He was the Robert Callahan, a financial titan, a political force, a man who could pick up the phone and change the course of someone's life, or destroy a career, with a sentence. And he was my husband. Darren never knew. Layla had no idea. I had kept our marriage a secret, exactly as Robert asked. For our safety. Carl looked at the note again, stunned silent. Then, after what felt like a decade of silence, he murmured, "Water. Would you like some water?" I nodded. "Yes, please," I whispered, my voice so fragile I barely recognized it. Carl stood slowly, knees cracking, his age showing for the first time. He shuffled to the corner where a plastic pitcher and some disposable cups sat on a metal table. His back was turned. This was it. I took a deep breath as he poured the water. He returned, handed me the cup gently. I held it in my cuffed hands, taking small sips to hide the shaking. Carl sat down, his gaze flicking back to the note. I could see him battling within himself, weighing risk against hope, protocol against instinct. Then, quietly, he reached into his shirt pocket and placed the note inside. He'd made a choice. If you were Carl, would you risk everything to help a stranger in chains? Let me know in the comments with, "I want to know who you are." Carl sighed, long and heavy. He seemed like he hadn't taken a full breath in days. "If this is real," he said softly, "and this Robert Callahan really is your husband." "It's real," I said, my voice now steadier. "Every word." He leaned forward. "Tell me, how did you end up here? Why didn't your husband stop this?" I closed my eyes, letting the memories roll in like a tide. "I met Robert 6 months ago," I began. 6 months that changed my life after 15 years of loneliness. After my husband passed, Darren barely called. And when he did, it was short, distracted, never warm. When Layla entered the picture, he pulled away even more. My days became gray copies of each other, watering the garden, reading until I dozed off on the couch. Then one evening, at a small art gallery downtown, I stood before a painting of wild sunflowers, lost in childhood memories, when a man with salt and pepper hair and eyes full of quiet grief stepped beside me. We talked. First about the painting, then about art, then about life. He had lost his wife to cancer. I had lost my husband to a sudden heart attack. We shared that emptiness, and slowly we began to fill each other's. Within weeks, I was smiling again, laughing again. He made me feel seen, beautiful even. His only request? Discretion. He had enemies, he said. Business rivals. People who would use anyone close to him as leverage. So we kept our love quiet. Married in secret. A quiet ceremony, just us and two of his lifelong friends. It was real. And it was perfect. But I made one terrible mistake. I didn't tell Darren. I thought I would, just not yet. I thought there would be time. There wasn't. 3 months ago, Darren showed up at my house, unannounced, with Layla in tow. They looked around with eyes that weren't curious. They were calculating, asking questions about my savings, my assets, my will. Something felt off. So I lied. I told them I was fine, comfortable. But I didn't give them real answers. And they didn't like that. That was the beginning of the end. They came back again, asking for money. Just a loan, Darren had said. I gave him what I could, 10,000 from my checking account, then another 20, pulled from a retirement fund. It wasn't enough. When I said no the next time, everything changed. Darren came back, this time with legal documents. Papers he said were to protect me, family asset restructuring, tax sheltering. Nonsense. I told him I wanted a lawyer. And I saw it, the flicker in his eyes. That cold flash of something I had never seen in my son before. You don't trust me, Mom? He'd said. I should have walked away. But instead, I signed. Because he was my son. Because I couldn't imagine he would hurt me. But he did. 2 weeks later, I was served with a lawsuit. Forgery. Fraud. Embezzlement. Every signature I gave him, altered. Every paper, twisted into proof that I had betrayed him. He used everything against me. And Robert was out of the country. I tried to fix it alone. I didn't want to burden him. How foolish that was. Carl sat there, hands clenched into fists. His eyes glistened with the quiet pain of someone who knew family betrayal too well. My daughter, he said finally. She's 26. 2 kids. Her husband left her. They live with me and my wife in a tiny apartment. We're drowning in bills. My wife's medicine, it's over $1,000 a month. I'm working double shifts just to keep them fed. I met his eyes. Call him, Carl. Call Robert. He didn't hesitate. He pulled out an old cell phone, screen cracked, and dialed. The ring echoed through the room. Once. Twice. 3 times. My heart was in my throat. Then, Robert's voice. Callahan. Did Robert answer the call with the power I hoped for? Or did I misplace all my faith? You won't believe what happens in part 3. Stick with me. Callahan. His voice, crisp, precise, commanding, filled the small room like thunder. Carl nearly dropped the phone. He glanced at me, suddenly pale. I gave a small nod. This was it. The moment everything could shift. Mr. Callahan, Carl said, clearing his throat. My name is Carl Jennings. I'm a correctional officer at the County Justice Center. I'm calling because... He paused, looking at me. My heart was thudding like a war drum. Because your wife asked me to. Silence. Pure, weighted silence on the other end. Then Robert's voice returned, but it was no longer professional. It was strained. It cracked with panic. Cecilia? What happened to Cecilia? Carl hesitated. Sir, she's here. With me. She was arrested. Convicted. She's waiting for transport to the state prison. No. No, no, no. I could hear the change. He was no longer the controlled billionaire. He was my husband. Terrified. Carl handed me the phone. My handcuffed hands made it awkward, but I cradled the phone like it was made of glass. Robert, I breathed, my throat closing. I'm so sorry. I should have told you. Cecilia, my love. What happened? He asked, his voice raw, already breaking. Where are you? Who did this? Darren, I whispered, shame lacing every syllable. Our son. He set me up. They lied. Layla and him. They wanted the money. There was no sound for a moment. Then, the kind of silence that felt like thunder in the distance. And when Robert spoke again, his tone chilled the room. Your own son sent you to prison? Yes. They don't know about you. They think I'm alone. A slow breath on the other end. Then steel in his voice. Where exactly are you? I told him. He didn't hesitate. They're not transferring you anywhere. Stay right where you are. Put Officer Jennings back on the phone. I handed the phone to Carl, who held it like it was a live grenade. Mr. Callahan, he said cautiously. I need you to listen very carefully, Robert said, loud enough that even I could hear it from where I Saturday. My wife is not getting on that bus. In 5 minutes, Judge Lydia Hartwell is going to receive a motion for emergency injunction. In 10 minutes, you'll receive orders to freeze all movement. If she is moved, touched, or spoken to in a way I don't approve of, I will make sure every person involved regrets it. Do you understand me? Carl swallowed. Yes, sir. Understood. Good. Now, give her back the phone. I took it. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady now. Robert, I was so scared. I didn't want you to see me like this. Cecilia, you are not alone. Not anymore. You're my wife, and I will burn the world down before I let anyone harm you again. My breath hitched. But Darren, he's still our son. He stopped being your son when he put you in a cage. I couldn't argue. Not anymore. Have you ever been betrayed by your own blood? If you have, type family doesn't always mean loyalty in the comments. You're not alone. We're stronger together. Robert's voice softened. Listen carefully. My legal team is already on the way. I've got Morris Bennett. He's the best. You remember him from the gala, don't you? I smiled weakly. The one with the pocket square that didn't match? That's the one. He chuckled lightly, but it vanished fast. Cecilia Morris has overturned death penalties. You're coming home. And Carl. I haven't forgotten his kindness. He will be taken care of. You have my word. Carl's eyes widened when I relayed the message. He turned away quickly, but I saw him wipe his cheek. Minutes passed. Every tick of the clock was a nail in my nerves. Then, just as promised, the phone on Carl's desk rang. Jennings, he answered, then went stiff. Yes. Yes, Judge Hartwell. Understood. No transfer will occur. Yes, ma'am. He hung up, exhaled deeply, and looked at me. You're staying here. Until your lawyer arrives. Judge just froze the entire process. I slumped in the chair, for the first time since the courtroom, letting my body feel the weight of exhaustion and hope. Robert was coming. He was coming for me. And when Robert Callahan decided to move, no force on earth stood in his way. But as I sat there, in that cold, lifeless room, all I could think about was Darren. Where was he right now? Probably raising a toast. Laughing. Maybe even bragging to Layla about how easy it had been to manipulate his mother. He had no idea that a storm was about to tear his life apart. He had no idea that I wasn't finished. You won't believe what happens when Robert and his legal team arrive. Part 4 is the moment they realize they messed with the wrong woman. Stay with me. 40 minutes. That's how long I waited, pacing the cold, windowless room, my wrists aching from the cuffs, my heart swinging between dread and defiance. And then, the door burst open. He walked in like thunder. Tall. Sharp suit. Midnight blue tie. Confidence radiating off him like heat from the sun. His briefcase gleamed like a weapon. "Morris Bennett," he said briskly, shaking Carl's hand, then mine. "I'm here on behalf of Mrs. Cecilia Callahan. We're leaving. Now." Behind him came 2 assistants with stacks of files, phones pressed to their ears, voices clipped and full of purpose. And then, Robert. My Robert. He looked exactly the same, and yet entirely different. His gray hair was slicked back with precision, his black coat tailored to his broad frame, but it was his eyes. His eyes were fire. Controlled. Dangerous. His gaze scanned the room like a general surveying a battlefield. When he saw me, something in him cracked. He crossed the room in 3 strides, dropped to one knee despite the pristine suit, and took my cuffed hands in his. "My love," his voice broke. "Forgive me for not being there." "You're here now," I said, the tears slipping quietly down my cheeks. "That's all that matters." He turned sharply. "Morris, get these cuffs off her." Morris already had a document in hand. Signed by Judge Hartwell. Immediate removal of restraints. Effective immediately. Carl fumbled with the key, his fingers trembling, and released my wrists. I rubbed the raw red marks, watching Robert's jaw clench at the sight of them. Then Robert turned to Carl. "My wife told me what you did. That you made the call. You'll never be forgotten for it." Carl swallowed hard. "She needed help. That's all." Robert pulled out his phone, dialed. "Enrique, yes. Prep the house in Foxwood Glen. The 4-bedroom with the yard. It's for the Jennings family. Deed, keys, everything finalized by morning." "Understood." Carl gripped the desk to steady himself. "Sir, I don't even know what to say." "Then don't," Robert said. "Just accept the life you deserve." And just like that, a man's entire life changed. But that was only the beginning. Have you ever witnessed a moment when someone with power used it for good? Share it with me. Let's fill this comment section with light in a dark world. Fire. That night, Robert didn't take me home. We couldn't risk it. Not yet. Instead, he brought me to one of his private estates outside the city. A mansion tucked behind gates and tall hedges, wrapped in silence and security. I sat in the back seat, watching the city lights blur past, still stunned. Still processing. My hands still trembling from the weight of the past few weeks. Inside the estate, the halls were warm, quiet. A fireplace was already lit in the living room. Fresh clothes had been laid out. A team of lawyers and assistants buzzed in the background like bees in a hive, reviewing documents, gathering evidence, printing photos, and recording depositions. Morris approached us with a file in hand. His face was tight, unreadable. "We found something," he said. "One of the witnesses. The accountant." My chest tightened. "The one who claimed he reviewed my finances?" Morris nodded. "He's ready to talk. He says he was threatened. Paid to fabricate everything. Darren never gave him the rest of the money. He's angry, scared, and ready to confess." Later that afternoon, I met him. A man in his 40s, shoulders hunched with guilt, eyes shadowed from sleepless nights. His name was Adam Bryce. He sat in our living room, my living room, and trembled as he spoke. "Mrs. Callahan, I didn't mean for this to go that far," he whispered, staring at the floor. "They told me it was just a tax thing. Some document adjustments. Layla approached me first. Darren didn't even meet me until later. She was terrifying." I leaned forward. "Adam, look me in the eyes." He hesitated. "Tell me the truth now. All of it." He looked up. "I made it all up," he said, voice cracking. "Every transaction, every document. The $150,000 they said you took? It never existed. I forged the bank statements, used closed accounts, changed dates. They made it all up." "And you testified in court," I said softly, "and lied." "I didn't know what they were going to do to you," he said, shaking. "And then when I asked for the rest of my payment, Darren told me to disappear, or else." Morris recorded every word. That single confession lit the fuse. Within hours, more dominoes began to fall. A forensic analyst found inconsistencies in the bank records. Darren had made one crucial mistake. He used a signature style I stopped using 5 years ago. It was there, in black and white. More than that, Darren and Layla had opened a new account the day after my sentencing. Large sums had been transferred. My house had already been appraised. They were preparing to sell it. The house where I raised him, where his father died, where I patched scraped knees and celebrated birthdays and sat through storms with hot cocoa and blankets. And he was selling it like it was nothing. But the worst part, we found out Darren had a son. From a previous relationship. An 8-year-old boy named Caleb. And Layla, dear, sweet, venomous Layla, had been feeding that poor child stories. Telling him I was a criminal. That his evil grandma stole from his daddy. That's why he couldn't have new toys or go on vacation. When Caleb's mother, Jenna, found out what had been happening, she reached out. She brought Caleb to see me. He was beautiful. Darren's eyes. My smile. But when he saw me, he flinched. Hid behind his mother. He was afraid of me. "I'm not scary, sweetheart," I whispered, kneeling carefully, tears already welling. "I'm your grandmother. And I love you. No matter what anyone told you." Caleb looked up slowly. "You're not bad." "No," I said. "I'm not bad. But some people, they told you things that weren't true." "I want to believe you," he said quietly. And that shattered me. The final chapter is coming. The party Darren planned to celebrate my downfall is about to become his downfall. Trust me, part 5 will leave you breathless. The night air was crisp as we pulled up to the grand, glowing building in the heart of the city, the private club where Darren had planned his victory party. Cars lined the curb, music thumped through the doors, and guests laughed, glasses raised high. Inside, champagne flowed like water. Darren was already center stage, his voice booming as he announced the launch of a new investment firm. Layla stood beside him in a sequined dress, smug and sparkling. They were celebrating with my money. Robert and I waited just outside. Our car parked discreetly. From where we sat, I could see the laughter through the windows. The smiles. The lies. I tightened my grip on Robert's hand. "Are you sure you want to do this?" he asked softly. "We could just let the police go in." "No," I said, feeling the storm inside me rise. "He needs to see me. He needs to see I didn't break." We stepped out and crossed the street. I could already feel eyes on us as we entered. At first, just a few whispers. Then silence. One by one, people turned. Glasses froze mid-air. Music slowed. Conversations halted. And then Darren saw me. The color drained from his face as if someone had pulled the soul right out of him. His champagne flute slipped from his hand and shattered on the marble floor. Layla clutched his arm like it was the only thing keeping her from sinking. I walked toward them slowly, heels clicking like thunder, Robert by my side, a storm in human form. "Hello, Darren," I said. Calm. Measured. Deadly. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Layla tried to regain her voice first. You're supposed to be destroyed? Forgotten? In prison?" I tilted my head. "I know. That was your plan." Darren finally found his voice. "Mom, I don't know what this is, but—" "Don't," I said quietly, and he shut his mouth like a scared child. "I trusted you," I continued. "I raised you. I gave you everything I had. You looked me in the eye and stole not just my money, but my dignity. My name. You let me rot in court while you played the victim. You watched strangers put me in chains." My voice cracked, but I didn't fall. "Not this time. You broke my heart, Darren. Not just once. Over and over. And now, it's time." Layla stepped forward. "This is a private event, and you need to leave right now, or we'll—" Robert stepped in front of me. "You'll do what, Layla? Call security?" He smirked. "I own the building." And then, lights. Sirens. Flashing red and blue through the tall glass windows. The doors swung open. Police flooded in like a wave. Not slow. Not hesitant. This was coordinated. An officer stepped toward Darren. "Darren Dawson, you're under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, and perjury. You have the right to remain silent." Layla screamed as handcuffs snapped over her perfectly manicured wrists. The crowd gasped. Phones came out. Pictures were taken. Friends turned away, ashamed to be near them. Investors whispered to each other, already planning to pull out. The mighty couple, falling apart in real time. Darren struggled. "You can't do this. She's lying. You don't know the truth." "I know enough," said a new voice. A tall man stepped into the room holding a laptop and a signed affidavit. "Morris. The lawyer Robert sent to rescue me." "This," Morris said, "is a sworn confession from the accountant you paid to falsify documents. And this," he held up another file, "is a forensic analysis showing every manipulation you made. You're done." Darren looked at me, finally truly saw me, not as the weak woman he betrayed, but as the storm that was now burying him. His eyes pleaded. "Mom, please." I stepped closer, stared into his eyes, and spoke the last words I would ever say to him. "I loved you more than you'll ever understand. But love isn't a license to destroy someone." He cried. There, in the middle of the marble floor, while cameras flashed and the law took hold, Darren cried. "But I didn't. Not anymore. Tell me in the comments. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone." Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. They led them out through the same doors they once used to walk into court with smug smiles. Only this time, the handcuffs were on the right people. I stood at the entrance, watching them vanish into the night. Layla sobbing. Darren staring back until the doors of the patrol car shut him off from view. Robert slipped his arm around me. "You did it." "No," I said, wiping a single tear from my cheek. "We did." That night, I sat in my garden at the estate Robert built for us. The stars were brighter than I remembered. I held a warm cup of tea in my hands, and for the first time in months, it wasn't shaking. I had survived betrayal. I had survived prison. I had survived my own son's attempt to erase me. And I had come back stronger than anyone expected. A grandmother, a wife, a woman reborn, and above all else, a woman no one would ever underestimate again.